Good morning, I'm Megan Maleris. We appreciate you joining us right now on WFMY Plus. Protesters right now are taking to the streets all across the country today to protest the Trump administration and to counter the military parade happening in Washington, D.C. tonight, marking the Army's 250th birthday. The No King's Day events are expected to be the largest single-day anti-Trump protest since President Donald Trump retook office in January. Close to 2,000 events are planned in cities nationwide, including a few places here at home. As you know, this all started in L.A. June 6th. People there are protesting federal immigration enforcement and the president's decision to mobilize the National Guard and U.S. Marines. Friday, an appeals court ruled that at this time, troops can stay in Los Angeles, where the administration believes they are needed to protect federal buildings as protests against ICE raids continue. As for today's planned events, organizers say they are pushing back against what they see as growing authoritarianism and the influence of big money in politics. Let's take you to a live picture out of Washington, D.C. first, where the Army Festival is getting underway. This, as I said, to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. It'll continue until late in the evening. That parade set to start around 6:30 tonight. A festival full of music, fireworks, and a fitness competition earlier today. President Trump said he's very proud of this event. It also happens to fall on his birthday today. Back here at home, WFMY crews are spread out monitoring demonstrations across the Triad as we speak. Nixon Norman in Winston-Salem, Giselle Thomas in High Point, and in Lexington, Joseph Leonard. Let's begin in Winston-Salem. The Pride Festival also happening on Trade Street, approximately half a mile from the No Kings protest. So a lot of people are gathering downtown right now. Let's go right to Nixon Norman. Scoping out the situation. Nixon, what does it look like there?
Yeah, Megan, it is loud out here and it is proud. Things just kicked off here with, like you had just said, Pride and the No Kings protest, but it's become sort of like a merged event. Both people are here all for the same reason. This day is all about peace and love, but the people here are fighting for the things that they believe in, especially when it comes to this administration's policies. They are against a lot of what's going on in our country right now, but they have made it very clear that they are going to keep today safe and calm and again about love and peace here in Winston-Salem. We actually spoke with the president of the Pride, the Winston-Salem Pride here, and he says that same thing that I just said, that they are trying to keep things safe here today, calm and all about love. Here's what he said.
The two groups decided to merge. We've been working with them all week and trying to tailor their message to the crowd and get away from calling it a protest. So it's a celebration, it's Pride. We don't like to use protest. Pride started as a protest, but it's changed so much over the years and it's more of a celebration, and that's truly what it is now. Protest kind of puts a negative connotation on it and kind of gets people worried about their safety. And that's one of the things that we try to make sure we maintain is a safe space for everybody.
We're kind of in a stop and go pattern right now, again, as the parade has just kicked off right around 11. We're here at the end with the No Kings protest, folks, but we will continue to move on over the next hour, as you had said, Megan, over the next mile or so. And there are a lot of people here. Actually, the president of Pride told us that they have expected 60,000 people to come here today. And we've spoke to a lot of people again, and their message is just going against the current administration and some of the policies that they feel threaten their livelihood and who they are as people. Again, we're out here live in Winston-Salem. I'm Nixon Norman, WFMY News 2, sending it back to you, Megan.
All right, we'll check in with Nixon in just a bit. As she just said, these two events now have officially merged, so expecting a lot more people in one place at one time. We'll be monitoring how that all unfolds. The organizers, as they said, hope this will stay peaceful. Now let's head to North Main Street in High Point. This event from 11 to 1, so just getting underway. A march is set to happen at about 11:45. WFMY News 2's Giselle Thomas is there. Giselle, it's my understanding this demonstration has also gotten larger in just the last few hours.
Yes, now we're here off North Main Street in High Point. We're able to see some people starting to gather as they're making their way down to make a full session. We know that this is a collaboration of two different gatherings. It's going to be people coming in the High Point area and then also the people who were set to do a protest in Greensboro. So we're having a large amount of people. We're seeing hundreds of people making their way as they're going downtown. Now, a part of the demonstration today, it's being hosted by Indivisible Guilford County. We know that there are going to be performances by artist Joe Troop, but also one of the groups called Piedmont Raging Grannies. Now, I was also able to speak with a representative from the High Point Police. We've seen a very large police presence stationed all around. We're seeing them being off on the side of some roads, but in the meantime, we know that it's still a peaceful protest at this time. Now, I was able to speak to some women who were making their way downtown who say that they want to stand up for the people within the country. They're saying they want there to be more of a connectivity and community, and they don't like a few of the different things that the administration is doing at this point. Let's take a listen to what she said.
Where I think everybody comes from a family of immigrants. We all have immigrants in our history. While I am a second generation in America, I know that my great grandmother who came here from Mexico, if she had been born a generation or two later, she could very easily be one that is being removed from her family at this rate. And I live in a neighborhood that has a lot of immigrants that came over from other countries, and their children are elementary school age, and I couldn't imagine what it would be like for those children to come home to no parents.
Now, piggybacking off of that, we're also going to be hearing from some immigrant activists, some veterans, even some federal workers today. Now, the actual march is going to be taking off around 11:45. Right now, you can see there's people who are truly gathering and getting to one major space, and then we'll move from there. We're going to be walking along with them and also just being a part and seeing how things are going. Again, they are saying very clearly that they want this to be a peaceful protest and that they want to make it non-violent in any way, shape, or form. Live in High Point, Giselle Thomas, WFMY News 2.
Yeah, thanks, Giselle. A reminder here, Indivisible Guilford County announced this morning on Facebook that it had moved the No Kings rally weeks ago from Greensboro to High Point, merging those two events because of the Black Food Truck Festival happening in Greensboro in honor of Juneteenth. So there will be a larger crowd in High Point than perhaps what was initially expected with those initial two protests in both Greensboro and High Point. Right now, let's get to our third crew out on the scene. Again, this is intended to coincide with military parades in Washington, D.C. and President Trump's 79th birthday. So there are also demonstrations in Lexington on South Main Street to counter all of that. Joseph, what are you seeing where you are?
Yeah, we're live in downtown Lexington where another of the No Kings protests is taking place. As you can see behind me over my shoulder, most of the folks here are congregated outside of the Davidson County Courthouse. Also across the street, we're seeing a few dozen people who are also part of this protest. I'm going to step out of the way so our photographer Raymar Thomas can kind of show you the scene down here. So this movement is part of a national day of action. Thousands of people rallying across the country under the No Kings banner. Here in Lexington, protesters are chanting the phrase "No Kings" over and over. They're holding signs. One of them reads, "Freedom, not fascism." Another reading, "No justice without due process." Their message here is clear. They're accusing President Trump of what they call authoritarian behavior. So they're criticizing his crackdown on illegal immigration and his administration's focus on ramping up ICE deportations. They're also taking aim at his crackdown on certain student demonstrations on college campuses across the country. Now, while Davidson County in the past has voted for Trump in 3 straight elections, it's also no stranger to pushback. This community has held multiple protests during both of his terms. This just the latest of that. We also just spoke with the organizer of this event about 20 or 30 minutes ago. She says she was pleasantly surprised by the crowd out here today. She says she had about 150 or so people sign up online. Now, it's hard to tell the exact number of people who are out here. I would say at least 100 or so are standing outside of the courthouse and maybe a few dozen across the street. So we don't have an exact number, but I would say that it looks around that size. Now, people have also been driving up and down the street. As you can tell, this street is not closed off. Some people are honking, both in support, and some of those folks obviously not in support of this protest. Now, this is one of nearly 2,000 similar protests that are happening across America today. As of right now, this crowd is very peaceful. There is a small group of counter-protesters kind of on the middle, on the side street here, of Center Street, who are protesting, counter-protesting. But right now, tensions are very low in this protest. We will continue to cover this protest and all the protests around the Triad live and online. Live in Lexington, Joseph Leonard, WFMY News 2.
Yeah, Joseph, if you'll stay with us for a moment, I want to ask you a little bit more about law enforcement, because we know in Davidson County, they're well versed in handling large crowds. Lexington Barbecue Festival happens with hundreds of thousands of people every fall. We know there were also demonstrations in Lexington just a few years ago with the Confederate monument there, ultimately leading to the removal of that monument. So Lexington police are well prepared in dealing with various types of events. Joseph, have you seen a big law enforcement presence today, and what's the feeling out there as far as how this is all going to go?
You know, it's interesting you say that, Megan, because as I look across here, it's one of the first things I notice. I don't see any police officers here right now. If they're here, I just can't see them. But so far, the thought process here is this will be a peaceful demonstration. The people here obviously have high tensions. They're not fans of President Donald Trump, but they want to keep everything peaceful, and they want everybody to just stand out here with their signs and chant and yell.
All right, Joseph, thank you for that context. It looks like that is starting off to be a quiet demonstration right now. We'll monitor it and see how things progress. Governor Josh Stein addressed the widespread protest planned in our state and country today. He sent a clear message saying, quote, "Keep North Carolinians safe is an absolute must." He also said the right to peacefully protest is sacred and enshrined in our First Amendment. He said he'll always work to protect that right and urges everyone who wishes to be heard to do so peacefully and lawfully. His words there. You might have questions about the laws in place for protesting here in North Carolina. Megan Bragg verifies the different rules.
We do have a right in this country to protest. However, there are some rules in North Carolina for where, how, even what you wear to a protest. So let's verify. Our source for this is North Carolina law. So the first question, can you protest anywhere? This is actually going to go into the false column. Here's why. You are only allowed to protest peacefully in public spaces like sidewalks, parks, and public property, and you cannot protest on private property. The next question here is, do you need a permit to protest? And this is kind of a two-part answer here. So here's what we found. You do not need a permit if you are on sidewalks in most parks, but you do need a permit if you are blocking streets, have a very large crowd, or using amplified sound at certain designated parts or plazas. And finally, can you wear a mask at protest? This is going into the false column. And here's why. North Carolina lawmakers passed a law last year that you cannot wear a mask during protests unless it's for health or religious reasons. If you are someone who is wearing a mask for those reasons, if a police officer asks you to remove it to identify you, you must take it off or you could be arrested. With your Verify, I'm Megan Bragg.
All right, we want to take you live now to a few other events happening all across the country today. Keep in mind, all of this in conjunction with President Donald Trump's 79th birthday and the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. Let's take you first here to, I believe, Philadelphia, or excuse me, D.C., where we're seeing crews assemble for what will be the massive military parade happening later today. This will all start at 6:30 tonight. D.C. does not have a No Kings protest planned. All of this will be in conjunction with The military parade, again, set to start this evening, but already events are happening in D.C. This is the closest to Philadelphia, where we know that there are also demonstrations happening in battleground Pennsylvania, which was key for President Trump's election this time around. We'll get you one of those live pictures up, but I want to just give some context here again to why all of this is happening. Demonstrators are protesting against what they believe are illegal actions taken by the Trump administration to deport hundreds and thousands of migrants who are here in the country illegally without due process. We've seen this movement start in Los Angeles, where at some points this past weekend, those demonstrations turned violent. There were clashes with police. There were law enforcement vehicles set on fire, several arrests happening there. And then this big legal back and forth between the president and Governor Gavin Newsom of California about the deployment of the California National Guard, whether the president has the authority to do that. For now, an appeals court has ruled he does. And so we'll be closely watching Los Angeles today. Here is that picture we mentioned earlier of Pittsburgh. Keep in mind, this is all fluid. Our crews all across the country are covering these events, and we're taking them live. So let's see what we see here. Again, this is Pittsburgh. I mentioned the importance of Pennsylvania in this election. Pennsylvania very divided. You have a strong base who is for President Trump. You have a strong base who is not. It looks like this demonstration is just getting started. You can see it looks very similar to the demonstrations we have seen in the Triad so far today. People appear to be peaceful right now, staying off the main roads. In front of this historic building there, you can see American flags, a lot of signs out front. You also see what I believe to be a couple of counter protesters. I saw a couple of Trump signs as well, but largely, it looks like these signs are in support of the No Kings movement against the Trump administration. You can see this sign says, "Say no to kings." Obviously, the implication that this group of people thinks President Trump is behaving more like a king or a dictator in his actions as they relate to immigration. This appears to be a peaceful protest, though, right now. Again, all ahead of this military parade expected in D.C. today, the Army's 250th anniversary. This parade set to cost an estimated $25 to $45 million and attract about 200,000 people. So it's going to be interesting to see how these demonstrations, these protests, unfold throughout the day and whether they remain peaceful, which is the large hope of law enforcement agents all across the Triad. I want to also shed some light about North Carolina and how we have evolved as a demographic over the past few years. I pulled up some information from the U.S. Census Bureau, the American Community Survey, which shows that North Carolina's foreign-born population has increased 8-fold since 1990. So in 34 years, we have 8 times the number of people who were born in other countries now living here. That will be substantial to this message today of local groups who are gathering here in the Triad, also in Charlotte and in Raleigh. This data shows about 40% of all immigrants living in North Carolina arrived in the U.S. prior to 2010, another 28% between 2000 and 2010, and the remaining 31% arriving after 2009. So that is something of note today. Keep in mind, North Carolina went for Trump the last 3 elections. Let's take you live to Atlanta now, where we're seeing a very large crowd. This is probably, if I had to guess, the largest one we've seen so far in our live coverage today. You can see what appear to be thousands of demonstrators backed up all the way to that tree line there, again with similar signage, similar messages to what we just saw in Pittsburgh a few minutes ago. It looks like this sign I'm seeing right now says, "Stand up for American democracy, respect free speech, no kings," on that large billboard in the back. Again, all coming here with the same message to demonstrate against the Trump administration and the immigration enforcement that has been happening all across the country, and that ramped up in Los Angeles just this past weekend with some demonstrations that turned violent. The general consensus, though, we've heard from law enforcement this week all across the country is they hope people can exercise their First Amendment right to peacefully assemble and make their voices heard without engaging in conflict or enduring violence in these protests. Again, this is a live look at Atlanta, where that No Kings protest just getting started. It looks like a peaceful gathering so far, folks appear to be yelling. We don't have the audio there. Want to be mindful of that as the day progresses. But this, again, does look to be a peaceful start. Georgia, as you know, also a key battleground state where the population very divided. You have a strong Trump threshold there. You also have people who clearly do not like what he's doing, his policies in place, and where they believe this administration is taking the country here. So again, we're monitoring these situations in Greensboro, Winston-Salem, High Point, and Lexington today. If you are just now joining us, you know Greensboro did not have a protest as planned here today. They merged with High Point out of respect for the food truck festival that has happened in Greensboro in honor of Juneteenth. So let's set the stage here again. If you're just now tuning in, we have crews happening all across the Triad today. We have Nixon Norman, and we have Giselle Thomas spread out monitoring the situations here at home. So let's get first to our crews. I believe we are heading first to Nixon Norman, who is live. Nixon, what are you seeing where you are, and has the crowd grown in size since we last checked in with you?
Absolutely, Megan. Things are in full swing here in Winston-Salem. Not the protest, the parade has taken off. Again, full swing. There are thousands of people here. And some of the things they keep chanting, I'm just going to repeat some of those to you. We won't go back. We have pride. And this is what democracy looks like. Some of the people we spoke to earlier say the simple reason they are here today is have their voices heard, and again in protest to some of the current administration and anti-Trump sentiments about what he's doing with policies. I spoke with a queer couple earlier today who've been married for over 30 years, Kim and Kate Coast. She says one of the main reasons she's out here is because she's worried that it could dissolve her marriage eventually. Here's what she had to say.
Well, there's several reasons. I think the most important is for pride. We love our community. We love all people. We love all people of color and diversity. But no King's Day, we can't have it. I'm worried that the way the administration is working now, we could lose our marriage of 36 years because of what the administration is doing now. So we as Americans, diverse Americans, have to make a statement. We treat all people with love and respect, and we also have to tell people that we cannot continue down the path we're going with America the way it is.
And as for a sense of security, things feel safe here in Winston-Salem for the time being, of course. People are just minding their own business. They're walking in the parade. They're doing their chants. They're holding their signs. One of the other chants that was going around was no ICE, no KKK, no fascism in the USA. Again, folks are out here protesting, peacefully protesting, I might add, and they're here celebrating Pride. It has become an event of a merger event between Pride, Winston-Salem Pride, and the No Kings protests, which you have just mentioned are happening all over the country, and of course here in North Carolina today. Again, we're live here in Winston-Salem. Nixon Norman, WFMY News 2.
Yeah, Nixon, stay with me for a moment. I want to ask you again about that merging for our friends who are just joining us. We heard earlier from some organizers of Pride who said that this will be a merging of events, the Pride Festival and the No Kings movement. But was this merger planned, or did it kind of happen organically today?
It was kind of organic, and it's been happening over the past week, according to the Pride president here in Winston-Salem. There was talks about kind of toning down the language when it comes to protests, just again because they do want to convey a message of peace and not anything that will make people scared to come out or scared to come and express themselves, whether that's Pride or No Kings. So it's something that has been in talks again over the past week, where the two kind of merged to then make a bigger statement. But one of the interesting things that was said is that most everybody here at Pride and No Kings, they all kind of share the same sentiment that, again, they're here celebrating their beliefs and also pushing against some of the current policies that are going on.
All right, Nixon, thanks for that perspective. It looks like that demonstration is happening peacefully so far, and I know that was a big point the organizers made. They wanted this to be called a demonstration and not a protest, right? It's a peaceful demonstration, they hope, of what they believe are injustices.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know exactly what verbiage to use, but it feels like a rally. Like I keep saying, there is a parade going behind me. People are chanting, they're standing up for their beliefs, but there's no vandalism happening. There's no fighting. It is very peaceful here. I feel safe. It's one of those things where it feels secure out here in Winston-Salem, really.
Nixon, thank you so much. We'll check back in with you in just a few minutes. Right now, let's head to High Point, where Giselle Thomas is monitoring another merging of demonstrations. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, Greensboro decided to cancel the planned Greensboro demonstration and go to High Point out of respect for the Black Food Truck Festival happening in Greensboro downtown in honor of Juneteenth. Giselle, what is the scene like out where you are? Has the crowd grown in size in the last few minutes?
Yes, now the crowd has definitely grown in size. We're here off North Main Street in High Point, and again, this is now we're at that merging point where we're able to see the crowd grow as they're waiting to start their march at 11:45. Now, what we do know is that these are people here from not only the High Point area, but also that protest that was supposed to be in Greensboro is here. So just a ballpark guesstimate, we're seeing about between 1 to about 300 people. I was able to speak to some people who say they were actually driving by on their way to go to a separate event within the area. They saw the crowd. They said like-mindedness is what brought them to come to this space. Right now, there's some music playing. We know that we're expected to see the Piedmont Raging Grannies. They're going to be making a speech here today. And then also, we're supposed to be hearing from artist Joe Troop. You can see there's a line of people, some of the signs reading USA Yes, saying no to Trump. Also, just some people who are saying they're here just for the community and also wanting to speak up for veterans, federal workers, immigrants, just things that they feel bothered by in what has been going on with some of the current administration. Now, throughout the time here, we're again in about 15 minutes or so, we're expected to see this crowd start marching. We're told they're going to circle the block. We'll be right there with them. And to just give you an idea of what's going on here, it's really a lot of smiles in the crowd. People are just coming together, saying that they're sharing that like-mindedness, and they're saying it's kind of refreshing to see a large amount of people all here for the same thing.
Let's take a live look out at the White House now. Thank you, Giselle. We'll check in with you in just a few minutes. It looks like it is all peaceful in D.C. All of the activity mostly is happening later on in the day in honor of the Army's 250th anniversary. There is a massive, very controversial and very expensive military parade happening at 6:30 tonight. It's supposed to be about 90 minutes, and it will be something to see. There are tanks. There are going to be soldiers representing all aspects of military conflicts over America's history, and there will be what President Trump hopes will be a joyous celebration, not only of Flag Day, but also of his birthday. It's his 79th birthday. He has been very active on his Truth Social account this morning. Let me read over a couple of things he has been saying. He has been emphasizing that today is a happy day. Happy 250th birthday, America, he posted. Again, just an hour ago, this is a big day for America, triple exclamation mark. Happy Flag Day, he also posted in the last few minutes. And then this last one about 59 minutes ago, he said, our great military parade is on, rain or shine. Remember, a rainy day parade brings good luck. I will see you all in D.C. There is no planned No Kings protest happening in D.C., just the military parade. The next closest demonstration for No Kings is in Pennsylvania. You have the big one in Philadelphia, and then another one we brought you live coverage of earlier in Pittsburgh. So we will be monitoring all that is happening out of D.C. today. But as the president indicated, weather could be a factor, but not a deterrent unless you have severe weather. So we're going to be watching that as well. But just this juxtaposition of what President Trump is saying and what these thousands of demonstrators are saying is very noteworthy. You know, in a lot of these states where there are these massive protests, they were crucial for President Trump's ultimate victory in this last election, key battleground states. You saw Georgia, the massive demonstration getting underway in Atlanta. You see the several demonstrations happening here in North Carolina. You see the demonstrations happening in Pennsylvania as well. So there are definitely messages here beyond what the core of these protests is, which is this speaking out of immigration enforcement and the raids that have been happening in Los Angeles and other arrests all across the country. Let's get back to Joseph now monitoring the situation in Lexington. Joseph, what's it looking like where you are?
Yeah, we're live in downtown Lexington where another of the No Kings protests is taking place. If you look over my left shoulder, most of the folks are congregated outside of the Davidson County Courthouse. Now across the street, we're also seeing a few dozen folks protesting as well. I'm going to step out of the way so our photographer Ray Martinez can kind of paint the scene for you here. So this movement is part of a national rallying across the country under that No Kings banner. So the only thing different, I think, about this demonstration as opposed to the ones in Winston or High Point is this is purely a No Kings demonstration. There's no, there's no gathering of Pride folks or any sort of organization outside of Lexington. This is purely a No Kings protest here in Lexington. So protesters have been chanting the phrase No Kings over and over. They're holding signs, one of them reading freedom, not fascism, another reading no justice without due process. Another one says, if not us, then who, and if not now, then when. The message here is very clear. They're accusing President Trump of what they refer to as authoritarian behavior. So a lot of that is focusing on his crackdown on illegal immigration, his administration's focus on ramping up ICE deportation. And it's also taking aim at his crackdown on certain student demonstrations on college campuses. And while Davidson County has voted for Trump in 3 straight elections, it's also been no stranger of pushback over the first Trump administration and the second Trump administration. They've held several protests out of here. We just spoke with the organizer of the event about an hour or so ago. She said she was pleasantly surprised by their crowd out here today. The crowd has stayed steady over the past hour or so that we've been out here. We haven't really seen it grow all that much. We've seen other parts of the street being occupied with folks, but it's kind of stayed steady for the past hour or so. And she says she was pleasantly surprised by the crowd that is out here today. She said online she had about 150 or so signups, and it's hard to tell the exact number, but I would say it's close to that number, if not maybe more. We actually have seen this protest going a little bit further down the street. And yeah, so over the past hour or so, we've seen people kind of trickling in to this protest. People have also been driving by and honking horns. Now, some of those people are in support of the folks here, and some of those people are protesting against it. What we haven't seen here is really a counter-protest movement. There are a few counter-protesters kind of here on the side of Center Street, but most of the crowd here is in favor of the No Kings protest. It's been very, very, very peaceful. This is one of a few thousand protests across the country. Right now, this one has been very peaceful. Tensions here are very, very low, but we will continue to cover this protest and this demonstration live and online. Live in Lexington, Joseph Leonard, WFMY News 2.
All right, thanks, Joseph. An important note there about the lack of counter-protests so far. We know Davidson County is heavily Republican, very much a Trump threshold. But that demonstration, as you just saw there in Joseph's live shot, does appear to be peaceful so far. And of course, everyone there, including law enforcement, hoping it stays that way. Let's take you back out to D.C. Remember, the reason all of this is happening today to coincide with the Army's 250th birthday. This is a fitness competition happening underway to get things going there ahead of the massive military parade happening tonight. You can see Army troops working on various exercises, crowds watching them do that. This military parade is going to be something to watch. It will be massive, and it's controversial for the expense. About 6,100 soldiers, as well as 128 Army tanks, armored personnel carriers, and artillery are going to parade before the president and viewers, while about 62 aircraft fly overhead. And there's going to be a storytelling happening in this parade. It'll tell the Army's story, starting with the Battle of Lexington, the first battle of the Revolutionary War, and moving all the way to present day. Given North Carolina's important role in American history in both the Revolutionary and Civil War, it is likely we will see North Carolina battles represented in some capacity today. Each of those conflicts represented is going to have 150 troops in period costumes followed by a section of hundreds of troops in modern day attire. This planning has been going on for a long time now. President Trump said years ago he had hoped to bring a military parade here. Today it is happening again on the Army's 250th birthday, also on Flag Day. You can see a live look here at the White House in D.C. That flag, Old Glory, flying proudly above the White House today. Not a lot of activity, though, happening outside there for the moment. Again, most of that getting underway tonight. And President Trump emphasizing on Truth Social a few minutes ago, this event will happen rain or shine. Let's get back to the events happening here in the Triad. The No Kings protest countering what is happening in D.C. and the ICE arrest happening across the country. Nixon Norman is live. Nixon, what are you seeing?
Yeah, that's right, Megan. Actually, just what you said. There are a lot of signs that keep saying things like nobody is illegal on stolen land, no human is illegal, again, all in reaction to a bunch of those ICE raids that are happening across the country. We're out here still in Winston-Salem where the parade has wrapped up, or it is in the process of wrapping up, but things are still going on here in downtown Winston-Salem. There are still thousands of people out, and they will continue to be out here, again, as Pride was already pre-scheduled today, and then this No Kings protest came on about, like I had said earlier this week. So we're still out here. We're going to be talking to folks. We did speak to a few people earlier just again about their intentions as to why they chose to come out here on their Saturday and protest in Winston-Salem. Here's one of them right now.
We're here with both. You know, I'm a member of the queer community, and our community is constantly under attack. And you know, they're trying to tell us where we can use the restroom and who we can love, and you know, that is not okay. And I think the No Kings part of this is a government that is not out to protect us. The government is actively harming people, and it's time for the citizens to come together and rise up and use our voices.
As it comes to any aggression, the biggest thing I've seen out here today is as the parade was wrapping up, there are a few people in the roadway, and police did kind of have to push them up on the sidewalk. But again, for the most part, that has been the most aggressive thing that has gone on today. This has been a safe environment. There has not been any time where I felt threatened for my life. This is just how things are going down here. It's a peaceful protest in Winston-Salem. And like I said, even though the parade is done, that protesting is still going to continue on, and celebration of Pride is going to continue on here in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, Nixon, stick with me for a moment. I want to ask you about law enforcement. I see one police officer in the backdrop of your live shot directing traffic at the parade. We heard from Joseph earlier in Lexington, who said he did not see an overwhelmingly visible presence of law enforcement, though we know in talking with them yesterday they are prepared for whatever happens. What is the law enforcement presence like where you are in Winston-Salem, and have you gathered any feedback from them as far as how today is going or could go?
I have not gotten specific feedback. Again, I was right here when there was a moment where the police kind of had to move people onto the sidewalk. I'm actually standing half on the sidewalk now just to kind of stay out of the way. But as for the presence, I wouldn't say that it's overwhelming, but there is definitely a presence here. There are Winston-Salem police, and then again, the president of the Pride Festival here did tell me that all week they have been working with Winston-Salem police, again, just to kind of keep the environment safe so that people feel safe coming out and expressing themselves just how they want to. So not an overwhelming presence, but there is definitely a presence here of police and officers, yes.
That perspective. Thank you. We will check in with you as the day goes on, but for now it does look like that is a peaceful demonstration, and that is the language we heard organizers say they want this referred to as. They believe protest perhaps has a negative connotation, and they want to be heard peacefully today. And the merging of that Pride Festival and this event happened organically, Nixon said. Let's take a look now at Philadelphia, where there is also, wow, an aerial view of what we know is perhaps one of the larger events happening today with the No Kings movement. Philadelphia, one of the closer cities to D.C. D.C. not having a No Kings movement because there is the military parade happening later today in honor of the Army's 250th birthday. As this helicopter pans around the building, you can see what appear to be thousands of people gathered in the square of this very historic city. Philadelphia is expecting tens of thousands of people. The Detroit Free Press reporting This is going to be a major flagship event today. More than 2,000 marches total happening, and this could be one of the larger ones. Obviously, law enforcement there prepared for this. They knew this was happening. And the goal here in Philadelphia and elsewhere in the country today is for these demonstrations to happen peacefully, allowing people to make their First Amendment rights heard in demonstrating against what they believe is illegal action by the Trump administration. They think that these ICE arrests are unjust, and they want to make their voices heard about the direction they feel the country is going. President Trump, as I've been reporting, taking a completely different approach today, focusing on the celebratory nature of that military parade happening tonight at 6:30 and coinciding with his birthday tonight, a massive event happening in D.C. later on tonight. It looks like for now, though, this protest in Philadelphia remains peaceful. That crowd appears to be fairly stationary, with signs making their voices heard. We do not see any evidence of a counter protest or anything out of the ordinary there that would signify any violence like what we have seen happening in Los Angeles. All right, let's bring it back home now. We want to check in with Giselle Thomas. She has been monitoring this demonstration happening in High Point. And keep in mind, this High Point demonstration grew in the last couple of weeks when Greensboro demonstrators decided not to hold an event here out of respect for the Juneteenth Black Food Truck Festival. So Giselle, talk to us about what you have seen evolve in the last few minutes. We know there's quite a crowd out there in High Point.
We have sound.
Yeah, so in the past few minutes, we've actually seen two trucks. There was two trucks that had a Trump sign that was kind of doing a little bit of a counter protest. All it's been was just them driving through the area, beeping. They had their flags, and then people were kind of just seeing them go by, and that was it. So it's been very peaceful, very calm here. Again, this is a collaboration of two groups. We have the people here in High Point, and then also the protest that was supposed to take place in Greensboro. They've joined here on North Main Street. There's several hundred people here that we can see just from a ballpark answer here. We've also seen, I've been talking to some organizers for the Piedmont Raging Grannies. They're actually getting ready to prepare with their speech, and then in just a few minutes, we're expected to see some people start marching down Main Street, and we're told that they're circling the block. They actually just started doing a chant just now, so lots of action here in this gathering area, but they haven't started their actual walk yet. Throughout the time we've been here, I've met people who said they came to be a part of this protest that was organized by Indivisible Guilford County. Some people even say they saw the large crowd of people, got out of their cars, wanted to figure out exactly what was going on, felt like they were connected to the like-mindedness, with people here saying that they don't like some of the things going on with this current administration in regards to some things involving immigration, also with veterans, and also just with some of the cuts with federal workers. Here's a soundbite from some women I spoke to who are making their way to the protest today.
Know that we're all standing against this administration and their attempts to take people out of this country just for overstaying their visas is unfair, and we're going to have our voices heard today, and we're all going to do that as one community for the United States. Just really makes us all feel connected as an entire group. So I think that's why I'm out here today, just to make the United States feel connected again.
And that connectivity is expanding throughout multiple generations. We've seen all different age groups out here, from babies to adults, even to some elderly, just all different age groups coming together for this one cause that they have. Throughout the morning, we're expected to see people starting to march again, coming from Main Street, and they're going to make their way around the block. And right now, High Point Police have told us that they have increased a bit of their law enforcement just to keep an eye on things, but there hasn't been anything crazy going on. It's just people gathered together, and they're here to support one another. Live in High Point, Giselle Thomas, WFMY News.
Yeah, Giselle, stick with me for a moment. I want to ask you about that law enforcement presence. You said nothing really out of the ordinary, just preparation. Have you seen any agencies from beyond High Point, Greensboro Police, for example? Have you seen any indication that they are being called in to assist?
Right now at this time, I've only seen High Point, and the best way to explain it, they're kind of sticking towards the outskirts. So like right here where we are on North Main, they're giving space for people to get to where they are, and they're more so where the parking area is. So from what I understand, they're only going to really kick in if needed. So they're kind of just staying back, letting things happen unless they really need to involve themselves.
For that explanation, Giselle. I also want to ask you about the chants you've been hearing. You said people have been chanting things peacefully. I can see the signs. That woman behind you has a sign that says resist. What is the overarching message of the group standing around you right now?
Yeah, so the overall message, connectivity and like-mindedness. I know I said it a little bit just from talking to people, that's what they've been telling me, but it's also just knowing that there are some people who are not really liking some of the things that our administration is doing and feeling that they described it as a safe space for them to come together and voice their truth or what they believe is their truth. So it's really just a space for everyone to come together. We see there's lots of American flags raising and just really wanting to come together as one, fighting for all the people that live here in this country.
All right, Giselle, thank you for that perspective. We'll check back in with you as that march gets underway. As we speak, about 11:45, I believe, was the time for that to begin. Let's take you back now to Washington, D.C. Let's take a live look at the White House. And I want to give context. I happened to notice in Giselle's live shot the T-shirt one of the women she was talking with was wearing. It said, "Immigrants are not criminals, they are people." Again, the overarching message of this No Kings movement is to take a stand against the ICE enforcement that has been happening across the country and the enforcement that specifically ramped up with raids in Los Angeles over the past weekend, leading to some violent clashes there at points in the deployment of the National Guard. North Carolina has a very big immigrant population. The census data shows North Carolina's foreign-born population increased 8-fold since 1990. If you're just now joining us, I talked a little bit about that earlier. North Carolina has also been such a key battleground state for President Trump. He won North Carolina the last 3 elections, but it is largely still very split. As you can see, we have a Democratic governor here. There is definitely a divide with people who are in his camp and who are not, as you've seen evidenced by these demonstrations happening in the Triad today. It is President Trump's 79th birthday today. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, he's been very active on Truth Social, hoping for a celebratory parade happening tonight. A very expensive parade, but one that will involve thousands of troops and tanks, representations of conflicts in American history. So that will be certainly something to watch. Let's get back here at home to WFMY News 2's Joseph Leonard. He has been keeping an eye on Lexington, Davidson County, also a large Republican concentration there. But Joseph, you said earlier you have not really seen many counter protests to the No Kings.
Yep. All right, I got a new fan. Are you hearing?
That's right, we haven't seen a lot of counter-protesters, but we did move across the street just so you can get a better view of the crowd here in downtown Lexington. Now, most of them are congregating outside of the courthouse here. We've kind of seen that group shift a little bit towards down the road, a little bit to get out of the shade. It is hot out here. We've also seen several, or a few dozen people across the street of them also holding signs, chanting, and being a part of this protest. I'm going to let our photographer Raymar Thomas kind of just show you some scenes from here. The folks out here tell us they just want to be heard. They tell us they're concerned about the several national policies that President Trump is carrying out, mainly that focus on the ramping up of ICE deportations. People here are waving American flags. Some of them are waving pride flags. One of the signs here, I'm going to read it to you, that I saw earlier. It says resist. None of those signs reads unite for democracy. And that's what a lot of the people here feel that they're doing. They say they're uniting against an administration that they believe is working against their best interests. Now, this is part of that National Day of Action. There's thousands of these protests all across the country under that No Kings banner. Here in Lexington, it's been pretty steady. We've seen this crowd kind of trickle and grow over the past hour or so. Most of them are chanting No Kings over and over. Their voices are just really filling this block and a half here in downtown Lexington. The message from the protesters here is clear. They're accusing President Trump of what they believe is authoritarian behavior. They're taking issue with this crackdown on illegal immigration, its push to ramp up those ICE deportations, and another of the main focus here is the response to the student demonstrations on college campuses. Organizers say it's stifling free speech. And while Davidson County has voted for President Trump in the last 3 elections, they've also been outspoken. We've seen several of these types of protests or similar protests during his first administration and now obviously in his second administration. We've also seen a lot of cars driving by honking, some of them in support and some of them honking obviously not in support of this protest. And like I just mentioned earlier, this protest is one of around 2,000 that we're seeing across the country. And here in Lexington, it's been very peaceful. There is a small group of counter-protesters kind of on the side of the street here. There's been a gentleman driving up and down with a Make America Great Again flag. So we've seen some of those counter-protests, but mostly the tension here is very low. We will continue to cover this demonstration live and online. Here live in Lexington, Joseph Leonard, WFMY News 2.
Yeah, Joseph, definitely it has gotten louder since we last talked to you. Just for some context here, Davidson County is well versed in handling large crowds. Of course, the Lexington Barbecue Festival every year brings hundreds of thousands of people to downtown Lexington in one day. So police are very experienced in handling crowds and allowing people the opportunity to enjoy or express themselves in the city of Lexington. Lexington also is no stranger to demonstrations. You might remember, if you've lived here a while, the demonstrations that happened back in 2020 when there was this push to remove the Confederate monument from downtown Lexington. Ultimately, that did end up happening, but there was a lot of back and forth about that. There were some clashes that largely did remain peaceful, but just important to note today as we see another display of people making their voices heard about an issue they believe is important to democracy. Right now, let's head back out to WFMY News 2's Nixon Norman. She is live in Winston-Salem, where if you're just now joining us, the Pride Parade has merged with the No Kings movement, and there are now hundreds, if not thousands, of people gathered together to send a message. Nixon?
As I had mentioned earlier, the parade wrapped up not too long ago, and so has the No Kings protest. But that doesn't mean folks are stopping expressing themselves here today. As you can see, Pride is still going on here in Winston-Salem, and there is just a sea of people behind me. Music is blaring, people are in their bright colors, everyone's having a good time. This is a good time here in Winston-Salem. And again, we are out here in the midst of it. We spoke with a lot of people today, again, about their intentions as to why they came out to, again, express themselves, to celebrate Pride, to go against the current administration. And we spoke with somebody with an indivisible group here in Winston-Salem. Here's what he had to say, again, about his intentions for coming out today and just all of these folks being out here today, Saturday, June 14th.
Some of these folks, this may be their first Pride. Other people, they're many, they've been here a lot. But to let them see what Pride is all about. And then the folks along the parade route were passing out literature and letting them know that we're indivisible and we're going to fight the Trump agenda.
Now, like I had mentioned, Pride and the protests were joined together today, but the Pride Festival here in Winston-Salem is going to continue on for the next few hours. So if you're in Winston-Salem and you want something to do on Saturday, this is the place to be. Like I said, there are just thousands of people behind me, all having fun, celebrating Pride. And it has been a peaceful day out here in Winston-Salem. Megan?
All right, Nixon, stay with me for a moment. I know there are people just tuning into the feed. You mentioned earlier, police are out there. Largely, things have remained peaceful. There was a minor issue with where people were standing on the sidewalk. Can you go over that and whether anything has happened since of concern?
Yep. Nothing has happened since, and I actually do not see many policemen around right now. What was happening earlier is as the parade was coming to a stop, the police were trying to keep people out of the road so that the remaining cars that were driving through the parade could get through and not hit anybody out in the roadway. So again, not a super aggressive moment, but there was just a bit of force from the police just trying to get people up on the sidewalks, maybe some who weren't listening all the way, getting back out into the roadway, but nothing of brutal force. It was just people, it was just the police trying to keep folks safe and out of the roadways.
Yeah, we know the overarching message at your demonstration is that of unity. What have you seen on the signs, on the t-shirts, on the flags people are wearing? What are they hoping the outcome of today will be?
That's right. No kings. That's the one thing I keep seeing. No kings since 1776, as we know, is when the country was born. There's things talking about no human is illegal on stolen land, that no human is illegal, period. There's a lot of talk about fascism and not going back, and this is democracy. And I think, to answer your question, that's the intention of today, is people just speaking their mind, expressing how they feel about the current administration and celebrating their pride, their identity, their sexual identity. That is the goal of today, being a democracy where people can just be who they are.
Thanks, Nixon. We'll check back in with you as the day progresses. Again, that merging of events there in Winston-Salem has now turned into a rally, and it looks like the No Kings portion of that is ending, and it will now turn into the remainder celebration of Pride in Winston. This is another live aerial view of Philadelphia where, wow, in just the last few minutes since we last saw this live picture, it looks like the crowd has grown in size, covering that area there near the historic buildings, of course, of historic Philadelphia. I do not see any indication that this crowd has gotten out of control in any way. It looks like people are demonstrating peacefully. Of course, we cannot hear the audio, but it looks like several roads in that area do remain open today as this demonstration gets underway. This is going to be one of the larger ones of the 2,000 happening across the country, and perhaps the closest to Washington, D.C., where there is no Kings movement today because of the preparations in advance of the military parade happening tonight in D.C. in honor of the Army's 250th birthday. You can see a helicopter there. It's hard to tell from this vantage point whether that's a news helicopter or whether that is law enforcement helicopter. But I want to note the mayor of Philadelphia urged for a peaceful protest today. She held a news conference yesterday saying police will maintain public safety, but they respect everyone's First Amendment right to protest and for free speech. Let's cap things off here at home. Again, checking in with Giselle Thomas. She is live in High Point, where a few days ago, Greensboro organizers said they decided to scrap a planned Greensboro rally and combine with a High Point rally out of respect for the Food Truck Festival. Giselle, we know there was a march set to get underway in the last few minutes. What's happening now?
Yes, now the march actually hasn't started yet because the excitement is still going right here in that middle ground meeting point. We're here off North Main Street in the parking lot of a church, and there's some speakers actually still talking. They've done some chants saying no kings. We've also seen lots of different people from different spaces gathered here. There's veterans that are here. There are people who say they have federal workers and their families just coming together saying they're here for the connectivity. Right now the crowd, I'm told, at least when we get closer to 12 is when the crowd will start to make that way around. They're going to be circling the block here on North Main Street, going all the way around the corner. Take a look at some of these signs. You'll see there's some people who are just going in the name of the protest, saying that they do not want any kings in America. That's been a very like-mindedness all around. There's some people I spoke to here also talking about how they don't like some of the administration stances towards immigration, speaking on the topic of saying that American is built through immigrants and having so many people here from all different places truly coming together as one. Now, today we're expected to hear from the Piedmont Raging Grannies. An organizer actually told me they're planning to sing a song today of togetherness, and also hearing some things from artist Joe Troop. And in all of this, there's also actually going to be a collection for Open Door Ministries. So some of the people that you guys see here today are coming together to gather non-perishable items for those with the homeless through that nonprofit. Now, throughout the time we've been here, we've also seen some opposing protesters. We've seen about 2 trucks drive by. They did have Trump flags on the back. Now, there was not So throughout that, there was no one doing any interaction. It was just them driving by and waving. Take a listen to some of the women who I spoke to about why they're here today.
One should be treated like animals, and people are being carted away in tiny little trucks and pulled away from their children and their spouses and the rest of their families, and it's criminal the way these people are being treated. This is not the Third Reich. This is not an autocracy. We left Britain 1776 to get away from these kings. We do not need another one. And
Exactly.
it's time for us to stand up to the bullies that are in the White House now. Let them understand what democracy is and what our country has been fighting for 250 years.
Now again, this protest is led by Indivisible Guilford County. We'll keep you updated on more. Live in High Point, Giselle Thomas, WFMY News 2.
All right, Giselle, yes, the message there on one of those shirts, hate will not make America great, a direct juxtaposition with President Trump's slogan of his presidency, to make America great. All of these protests happening as the White House prepares for a grand military parade tonight on President Trump's birthday, as we leave you with a live look at the White House, also honoring the Army's 250th birthday tonight. We'll have so much more coverage throughout our evening newscast and on WFMYnews2.com. Thanks for joining us on Plus. I'm Megan Maleris.